Okay, so this is a little tutorial on how to make honeycomb. In my pan I have got 5 ounces of granulated sugar, and I'm now just putting in 3 tablespoons of syrup-ish, thereabouts. And then before I turn on the heat, I'm going to mix this all together really well. That's the secret to getting this to work. Make sure that you've mixed it really well. So there's only 3 ingredients for honeycomb, and they are syrup and granulated sugar and baking powder, but you don't put the baking powder in yet. What you've got to do is you've got to wait till it's all boiling and get into a certain temperature, and then you can put it all together. Okay, so this is looking a bit too syrupy. I think I've overdone it. So I'm going to just add a little bit more sugar. And mix it in really thoroughly. And once all the sugar is mixed in really thoroughly, then you can turn the heat on. So on my cooker, I'm using the smallest ring, and I'll turn it up to the highest temperature, and that should be the best combination of making sure that it doesn't burn. So the great thing about this is because it's all sugar, it is soluble, so even if you make a right big mess, it won't damage your pan, because as long as you don't leave it boiling forever, that would be silly. You can just leave it in a sink of water and just put water in it and it will all melt back again. So this happens really slowly at first, and then everything seems to happen super duper quick. So what you need to have ready while you're waiting for this to all melt is a tin. This one is 8 inches by 8 inches roughly. You can vary, but make sure it's deep enough, because you don't want it overflowing over the sides, because it rises quite up and then high up and then it sinks back down. You'll also need a teaspoon ready and baking powder, or sodium bicarb. To be fair, sodium bicarb is actually better because you need less of it. So you need sodium bicarb ready, because you'll need about 2 to 3 big heaped teaspoons, and you need to sprinkle it. If you just whack it all in one big lump when you put it on, what will happen is you'll end up with a big lump, and then it won't taste nice. I know it's split apart. That's because you kicked a watermelon across the floor.
I didn't kick it.
Okay, so you're getting this all to melt, and it's got to get to the point where it's bubbling. So you need to have it on the ring in the position so that all parts are bubbling at the same point. Right, so you can fast forward through this bit because it's a bit boring, but you need to get it to the point where it's boiling and it's all melted, as long as it's good and mixed in. Now, if you do have a thermometer, that's really helpful, but there's 2 ways of doing this. Once it gets to the boil, it goes up in temperature, and I'll show you on the thermometer. So you can actually time, because I'm doing this in real time, you could time how long it takes to get up to the temperature, which is why I said about doing it on the smallest ring. Then you'll have the same kind of heating and timings that I've got. But it's good because it means that you can actually do it by time. So it's usually about 3 minutes to get it from the boiling point at where it's starting to bubble here. Can you see that it's bubbling around the edges? To the temperature that you need. So the temperature that you need it to get to, so I'll put this in, is about 130, 140. So if you can get it to 130, 140, you don't want it getting above that, but you want it on its way to that. So the temperature will start rising, and all you've got to do is just make sure that you don't leave it on too long. If you leave it on too long, it just goes dark and not very nice at all to eat. But it's sugar, so you know, it tastes good no matter what you do, really. As long as you don't burn it, please don't burn it, because that's just a waste of sugar. But it's quite cheap to make, because the tin of syrup you can get for around £1.20, and the a kilo of sugar is only about 50-60p. And the baking powder, that's not much either, and you're only using a couple of teaspoons of that. But you can get quite a lot of this out. And I thought, well, I'll make this video because I know that Amy's making ice cream, so this is really good to go with ice cream. I say really good, that depends on your perspective. It tastes nice, but whether it's good for your teeth, I'm not so sure. But you know, just don't eat lots of it in one sitting. And if you've got any fillings, just be super careful, because it can really it can really mess up your fillings. But just drink water to wash it down with, and then you'll be fine. Okay, so the temperature's now going up quite rapidly, and then it will get to about 100, and then it'll start to slow down on the speed. And at this point, what you shouldn't do is you shouldn't try and mix it. So you shouldn't be like stirring it profusely, because that doesn't help. So we're now up to 110. So I'm just going to give it one little stir just to make sure that the middle is getting as hot as the outside. But you can see that it's bubbling now, and it's going up about a degree. Okay, so now we're on 110. So it goes up about 2 degrees every 10 seconds. So I know that I'm only a minute or two away now from it needing to come off the heat. So the easiest thing to do is to take it straight off the heat. So turn the heat off and have your baking powder ready, because this next bit is the bit that is really has to be quite fast. So have your sorry, I keep saying baking powder. Bicarb is better because you need less of it. Okay, so we're getting up to the 120 mark. So you can see to get from 110 up to 120 has taken approximately a minute. So I know that to get up to 140 it'll take another minute. So it's roughly, when it starts boiling around the edges, it takes about 3 minutes to get to the right temperature. And you need it to get to quite a relatively high temperature, because it won't set if you don't, and it'll just be all gooey. But then you don't want it to go to too high temperature, because if it goes to too high temperature it just burns and it won't taste nice at all. It just tastes burnt and it falls apart as well. Your baking pan that you're going to put your stuff into, your honeycomb into, that could do to be very lightly greased, or at least non-stick, and that will help. Okay, so we're now at that temperature. Turn the heat off, put the thermometer down. I'm going to sprinkle my baking powder around, and you can see it starting to bubble, so I'm going to stir it. Nicely stirred in. I'll pour it all in, and it bubbles up, and then I'll try and get the rest out. It's volcanic, so do not get it on yourself, because it will burn like Billy-O, and don't be tempted to lick anything either, because that'll burn like Billy-O too. So just be really careful, because it's super duper hot and you have to let it cool. And if you put that pan now, I've got some on my finger. If you put that pan, even though it looks a right mess, straight into the water now, it will be fine. So hopefully that's what you've got. So leave that to cool and set and it'll go hard. If you can't wait for that, then take your spoon and ditch some in a little bowl of water, cold water, and that'll make it set super quick and it'll be done. And that's it, that's how you make honeycomb. So good luck, have a go, and don't burn yourself.